Did you know that abortion was once legal in the Philippines and that it was once widely accepted across Southeast Asia? So what exactly happened? Let's learn more. Mabuhay or in Kapampangan, luwid kayo and intay. So at di krap, welcome back to another history video. It is me, Kirby Araullo, your friendly Pinoy historian and culture bearer. And if you are new to my channel, in this channel, I make videos about our people's history, culture, and everything in between from the Philippines and across Southeast Asia. So if you like learning about any of those things, don't forget to like this video, comment down below, share this video, and please subscribe. And in today's video, we will be digging deeper and learning a little bit more about the history of abortion and contraception in the Philippines and across Southeast Asia. But before we begin, here are some few reminders. Today's video is just an introduction to this hot topic. And you know, a single YouTube video is simply not enough to cover everything that I want to talk about. But I do hope that this video will help inspire you to dig deeper, to learn more and do something productive with that knowledge. You know, to help make our world a better place. And I would also love your support to help me sustain my channel and my research. So please consider being my patron on Patreon or a member of my channel here on YouTube. Or you can also get copies of any of my books, coloring books, and ebooks. So check them out on my website in the links below. In fact, to expand your knowledge about today's topic, check out my new book and coloring book about the fierce women of early Southeast Asia, where you can learn more and meet over 36 inspiring women from the histories and the oral traditions of our ancestors. So don't miss out and order your copies today. Maraming salamat po. So, without further ado, let's begin. Let's learn more about the history of abortion in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia. Abortion and contraception are once again becoming politically controversial issues. This is a result of the conservative-dominated Supreme Court of the United States deciding in late June 2022 to renounce or overturn the precedent set in the case known as Roe v. Wade in America back in 1973. So for those who may not know, this earlier legal precedent had made it a federal requirement nearly half a century ago for abortion to be made available throughout the United States, thus blocking efforts by state legislatures in conservative states to block abortion in their jurisdictions altogether. But following the June 2022 ruling, a majority of the 50 states which make up the American Union or the United States will now move forward to ban abortion altogether, as they are no longer federally mandated to allow it. So conservatives in the US or even in the Philippines justify this on the basis that abortion is in their eyes a modern development which is morally unjustifiable. However, what advocates of this conservative view miss is that abortion and contraception to prevent pregnancy in the first place are not modern concepts at all. They have been widely practiced for thousands of years in all parts of the world. And today, we will look at the history of contraception and abortion in one such area, in what is now known as Southeast Asia, back during the pre-colonial and early colonial periods. But wait, how exactly did they perform abortion? Was it even safe? I mean, I thought our ancestors were primitive, before colonialism. So unfortunately, there is this misconception that pre-colonial Philippines and by extension pre-colonial and early colonial Southeast Asia, or practically the pre-colonial societies in Asia, Africa, and the Americas, these indigenous communities were nothing but primitive before European colonialism or Western influence. But as you probably already know, hopefully from watching my videos, is that this is far from the truth. So apart from the indigenous practices, many methods of contraception were effectively imported into Southeast Asia from abroad. Unknown to many, contraceptive methods had evolved in regions such as ancient Egypt as early as the start of the 2nd millennium BC, or about 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. And from the ancient Egyptians, we find papyri evidences referring to vaginal suppositories for the prevention of pregnancy. In fact, religious texts in the centuries that followed, including the Old Testament and the Talmud, discuss the avoidance of pregnancy, either through withdrawal or the use of primitive contraceptives. However, the main influences on the development of contraceptive methods in Southeast Asia came from ancient China and India, where complex recipes for oral contraceptives were being detailed in texts such as the I Ching and the Ratirahasya, aka the Secret of Love, each of which outlined how various herbs and plants could be used to prevent pregnancy. But unknown to many, another major influence on the development of such methods in Southeast Asia came from the Islamic world. As early as the 10th century, over 1,000 years ago, we find the Persian physician Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi outlining methods of preventing pregnancy by blocking the cervix using substances such as cabbage. While around the same time, a near contemporary, Ali ibn Abbas al-Majusi, in his text entitled The Royal Book, he described how pregnancy for women for whom it could be medically dangerous could be prevented using a vaginal suppository made of rock salt. These latter ideas concerning contraception in the Islamic world became increasingly important in Southeast Asia from the 12th century or the 1100s onwards, as Islam, and along with it much of Arab culture, began expanding to become the dominant religion in much of the East Indies, in what are now known as Indonesia and parts of the Philippines. Now, while these methods might seem primitive to our minds today, they are actually very effective. In fact, studies during the second half of the 12th century repeatedly showed that rock salt, or indeed common salt, when used as a vaginal suppository, is actually highly effective as a spermicidal contraceptive. Unknown to many, the use of this and other contraceptives was widespread across pre-colonial Southeast Asia. And by the colonial period, another method of preventing conception, which was widespread across the Indonesian archipelago, but one which was probably less effective, was the retroflexio uteri, or what is known in English as retroverted uterus. And this involved indigenous female healers directing women in a backward rotation of the uterus, which was supposed to render women temporarily incapable of conceiving. But regardless of the respective effectiveness of these various contraceptive measures, recourse to such methods to prevent pregnancy reduced during the colonial era. In the 19th century or the 1800s, for instance, there was a dramatic rise in population growth across Southeast Asia. Studies of this phenomenon have focused on three of the best documented areas in the whole region: the Dutch-ruled island of Java in what is now Indonesia, the Spanish Philippines, and the independent Kingdom of Siam, aka modern-day Thailand. And in these areas, population growth jumped to between 1% and 3% per year during the 1800s. Historical demographers have argued that this rise in population was owing to two factors. Firstly, increasing food supplies and the availability of more jobs, or more likely the mass exploitation of workers in these countries, led couples to have more children and rely less on contraceptive methods to limit the size of their families. Secondly, the increasing spread of Christianity, particularly Roman Catholicism in the Philippines, saw the rise of theological, aka religious objections to the use of contraception, religious belief that remains dominant in the Philippines today. Okay, so how exactly, or how widespread was abortion in early Southeast Asia? Let's find out. So when one turns to the issue of abortion in Southeast Asia, it is evident that it was very widely practiced in the pre-colonial era across the indigenous societies of this vast and diverse geopolitical region. For instance, scenes on the walls of both the Borobudur and the Prambanan temples in central Java dating back to the 9th century or the 800s visually relate the practice of abortion in pre-Islamic Javanese society. Similarly, it is clear from the writings of Dutch officials in the Dutch East Indies, or what is now Indonesia, from the early 17th century onwards or the 1600s, and those of the Spanish officials in the Philippines during the same period, it was clear that they were shocked and scandalized by the prevalence of abortion in the areas they had come to conquer. So in both the pre-colonial and the early colonial eras, abortions were induced in places like the Philippines and Java in very much the same way as they were elsewhere, in Europe, Africa, and Asia since the ancient times. These included the ingestion of substances which would induce the termination of the pregnancy, or through through ancient surgical procedures. And of course, each of these carried considerable health risks, particularly surgical methods, which unlike in our modern times, were not as safe. And as such, the consumption of abortion-inducing herbs, plants, and medicines was the preferred method where local knowledge permitted. Surgical abortions where they were practiced were done so when it was clear that the unborn child had perished, and the life of the mother was now also at risk. As such, surgical abortion was often only used in medical emergencies. And this point raises the issue of the predominant reason why abortions were sought in pre-colonial and colonial Southeast Asia in the first place. Pero teka lang, bakit why? Why were they seeking abortion? What made our ancestors felt like they needed abortion? The motives behind abortion across the different societies of pre-colonial and colonial Southeast Asia were resoundingly similar to those which lead to abortion in our modern world. And these included but are not limited to the following: a threat to the life of the mother, aka when the mother's life was at risk, a concern about the ability to raise and nurture a new child in a large family, aka struggling to make ends meet, struggling to feed the family owing to severe economic difficulties and exploitation, and lastly but certainly not the least, where the mother wished to terminate the pregnancy owing to conception having occurred in cases of rape or incest. And actually, if we think about it, the prevalence or the widespread practice of abortion in pre-colonial Southeast Asia, this may have actually been exaggerated by the Dutch and the Spaniards during the 1600s. It is likely that these foreign observers were actually and unwittingly reporting on a temporary spike in abortion amongst the native women of Java and what is now the Philippines. In all likelihood, this temporary spike in abortion in these colonies was a direct result of the widespread incidences of rape by Dutch and Spanish forces during the conquest of these respective archipelagos. Eventually, like the use of contraception, abortion became less common in many parts of Southeast Asia as the colonial era proceeded. This was largely because of the spread of Christianity throughout certain regions, particularly in what is now the Philippines, the islands where fervent Roman Catholicism had developed and took a firm hold on many aspects of Filipino society by the late 1800s. So while contraception and abortion were widely practiced in Southeast Asia for centuries, the arrival of European colonizers and the spread of Christian missionaries had a major impact in reducing the widespread practices of abortion and contraception in the centuries that followed. And it was also undeniably a symptom of the larger decline of women's rights across the vast region. As mentioned in my previous videos, the status of women in Southeast Asia prior to the age of colonialism was much greater than that of their European counterparts. Overall, it was in many ways far better than the life of women in Europe or in East Asia. And I'm not saying that these early and pre-colonial indigenous societies were perfect by all means. But if we dig deeper and decolonize our minds, we can certainly learn a lot from our ancestors' deeper wisdom and vast knowledge. Because for the most part, women in these indigenous and early societies had more freedom and rights that many women today are still struggling to attain. A good example of this is the women's right to make their own decisions regarding their own health, body, and sexuality. They had and enjoyed these vital rights to make these choices without prejudice, without fear of violence, persecution, nor discrimination. And contrary to what many conservatives may fear, for the most part, they never abused these rights. In the case of our topic today, our ancestors never abused their access to abortion. Just because it was legal and widely accepted, it does not mean that women would go around mindlessly or viciously aborting their unborn child. As discussed in this video, it was only done when necessary. Women in many of these indigenous and ancient societies had the ability to decide on whether and when to have children. And their decisions were respected. And for the most part, it was considered integral to women's well-being and overall health. And today, we call these healthcare necessities and basic human rights under the umbrella term reproductive rights. Rights and freedom that our ancestors had and enjoyed, but somehow it remains elusive to women in our modern-day societies. So to learn more about this hot topic and how we, each and every one of us, can unite and take actions to make this world a better place for women, for our children and grandchildren, their children and great-grandchildren, and so on and so forth, check out the links below. And like what I say in my videos and to my students, let us face the realities of today by staying rooted in our people's history. Let us create a better society by being armed and empowered by the knowledge and the wisdom of our ancestors. And that is it for me today. So let me know what you think about today's comment. Let me know what you think about today's topic in the comments below. And if you like this video or learn a thing or two, don't forget to hit that like button, thumbs up, and please, share this video so more people can learn more about our people's history, culture, and everything in between. And please, 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 subscribe to my channel and help me reach that 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year or even earlier. That would be awesome. So what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and that bell icon so you don't miss out on my upcoming videos. But of course, before we go, today's shout out goes to all the women and organizations all over the world who are fighting for women's rights and fighting and standing up to seek peace, justice, and equality in our communities. Especially to 1 Billion Rising, the world's biggest mass action to end violence against women in human history. This is not a sponsored video, but check out 1 Billion Rising in the links down below to learn more on how you can be part of this movement to end violence against women all over the world. And special thanks and special shout out to my patron on Patreon, Marielle Atanacio. Actually, Marielle has this, amazing children's book project introducing goddesses from Philippine mythologies. So check out the links below to learn more and support this exciting project. Because let's be honest, our children, we need more books like this. So let us support one another. And with that being said, this video will not be possible without the love and the support of all my patrons and subscribers throughout these years. Kaya naman maraming salamat po. Magsukol-tuod kay mo, dakal pong salamat, or in kamay, or kontram, and in bahasa Melayo, terima kasih. See you next time, or in Tagalog, kita-kits, and in Kapampangan, mikitiks, and in bahasa Melayo, jumpa lagi, and in Thai, Jergan Mai.